Good afternoon, everyone. Well, it's good to be with you. It's been great just hearing. My button. My first deliberate mistake. There you go. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Reaching Others, and this is session 4. And if you've got your books, this is a great book. This is so good, so helpful for training and equipping people in sharing the gospel. And if you look there on, I think it's page 26, where it starts by saying the acrostic team, that's the word team, reminds us of the truth that together everyone achieves more. That's a great thing, isn't it? Great acrostic. The word team means together everyone achieves more. And the reason I'm here today, and Claire and my wife here, the reason we're here, well, certainly the reason I'm here, is because a team of people prayed for me, the part of the church that we'd started years and years ago, and I was dying. I was facing death. I had cerebral malaria after going out to Africa. It's one of the gifts they sent back with me, and I was in a coma. And the last thing the consultant said to Claire was, "I'm really sorry, but your husband will either die," he told her the truth, "will either die or have permanent brain damage. There's nothing more we can do except the drips that are on him, but he's fighting for his life." Well, do you know, a team of people that's called the church began to pray for me. And they prayed for me. I was in a coma, remember? They prayed for me for 3 days, 24 hours a day. And the guy that was in leadership with me, wonderful man, very wise man, full of the Spirit, and he got people to pray like in a chain. So there's like a tag prayer going on all the time. And so this went round the clock, 24 hours, 48 hours, what's the next one, 72 hours, for 3 days. And on that third day, interesting 3 days, comes up in the Bible a few times, on the third day, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up out of this coma. And I had I won't go into all it's quite a long story, it's not for now, but had quite an amazing experience. And as a result of that, I recovered rapidly. And the hospital, to their surprise, the consultants and everything, to their great surprise, they came round my bed on the 7th day with all their clipboards and scratched their heads and couldn't quite work out why this man who was dying a few days ago was ready to go home. And although I was very weak, I had to get some strength back. But God had actually healed me incredibly. I could tell you some details of that, but that's not for now either. And so I'm here because a team of people prayed for me together. And it is so true that together everyone achieves more. And I'm a testimony of that today. I got saved as a 10-and-a-half-year-old. I was brought up in a Christian home, probably similar to Pauline. I had 3 brothers and 3 sisters, so we were in a tiny little house, so we had to learn how to share together at an early age. But I gave my life to Jesus at 10-and-a-half because I realised that my whole life would be a waste of time if I didn't hand my life over to him. So I had a good start, really, and I remember in my teenage years that there was something missing in my Christian life, and I looked around me in the church I was going to, and I thought, I think most of the people here are missing out on something too, but I didn't know what it was. And so it started me on quite a search, really, that night after night I began to seek God. And I was praying, I was asking him to do a work in me. And during those nights, those evenings, when I thought I'd been talking to God maybe for 20 minutes, it turned out I'd been actually in his presence for 2 or 3 hours. And it felt just like half an hour. Needless to say that during those nights, I got absolutely baptised, filled with and overflown with the Holy Spirit. I didn't know anything about it, except that he was doing it and I'd met with Jesus. And I remember at the end of this couple of weeks going back to the church that I was a part of and going to one of the youth meetings, and one of the ladies that ran the youth meetings, she said to me when I walked into the room, she said, "What's happened to you?" And I said, "Why? Does it show?" She said, "It does." And I said, "All I can tell you is I had Jesus in my life before. I was born again before, but this time it's like I've met him face to face and he's so with me now. I now know what I need to do." And it set me on a trajectory, really, on a journey with Jesus to reach people for him and actually to see the church become everything the church should be. And that's been our journey for quite a few years now. And it's been a real adventure following him. And but teamwork is so important. This particular session is actually preparing the team. I think that's the subject. Anyway, I hope it is, because that's what I've been preparing the team. So I'm going to... It's happened before, I've done the wrong thing. So here's a question. What teams can you think of that are in the Bible? Think of teams. Just shout them out if you can. What different teams can you think about in the Bible?
Timothy and Paul.
Timothy and Paul. That was a team. It was a small team, but a really, really important one. Paul and Silas. Jonathan and David. The disciples. Elijah and Elisha.
Paul and his entourage.
Paul and his entourage, because this is all about... That's right, this is all about teamwork. And teams are right through the Bible. And God intends it to be that way, so that no one does just their own thing, but we learn how to work with God, with the Holy Spirit, and with one another. The greatest team builder, Jesus. And I think we should spend some time, as I do, thinking about Jesus, the leader, and what made him a great leader. Because if we're going to have a great team, you have to have actually a really good leader, leaders that are like Jesus. And when you think of the example of Jesus in his character, in his prayer life, which we heard about, in spending time with the Father, in following the leading of the Holy Spirit, in every part of Jesus' life, he is such an example. And in that example of how he lived, he was able to lead others, wasn't he? And so we have this team that we mentioned just now, the team of his disciples. And these disciples actually followed his lead, and so they had the greatest example. And I think God is wanting in these days to build teams of people together in the church to bring his kingdom in. Do you agree?
Yes.
And I want us just to turn, if we can, let's just go to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 4, and verse 18. Just look at a few verses there, just with this whole theme of preparing and having a team of people. Because Jesus actually knew, he could have come and done it all on his own. He was well able to do that. But Jesus sets the example to us that actually the way forward is to actually have a team of people working with God, with the Holy Spirit, and fulfilling his mission. And it says in verse 18, Jesus walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And they immediately left their nets and followed him. Now, we know that story, don't we? We've probably read those words many times. So Jesus actually, he calls people to come. That's the first thing. He calls them to come after him. That means to follow him. And to follow him means to be a disciple. So he's looking for a team of disciples who will follow Jesus absolutely in their personal life and then learn how to work together. And the third thing, this is the exciting bit for me, is I will make you fishers of men. So Jesus makes this team of ordinary, rough bunch of people into a team of followers, disciples, who are actually able to convey the message of the gospel that we heard about telling our story and preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ and what he's done at the cross, his death, his resurrection, the whole truth about who he is, so that people can come and receive him. And so Jesus says, this is the kind of teams I want. I want people to come, follow me, because I'm going to make them fishers of men. And my own story is that's what he's done with me. He's made me a fisher of men. And I learned actually so much in my earlier Christian days from actually being discipled or being made into a disciple by a couple of really good, strong men of God who I followed their example, their pattern, if you like. I let them speak into my life. I didn't like everything they said to me. I didn't like some of the criticisms. It wasn't criticism at all, but they taught me how to really follow Jesus at a deeper level than what I'd currently known. And we all need that. And especially when we're in the early days of following Jesus. And so we then hopefully get formed into a team. I believe God gets very excited when he sees teams teams of leaders working together, teams of people working out of churches together, and teams of people working even cross church, because it's all about God's kingdom, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when we get the kingdom focus, when we get that focus of the kingdom, actually the church things aren't so important, if I can put it that way. Those barriers need to come down so that we're more concerned about his kingdom, and because Jesus, he'll build his church. He'll do it. He'll do a good job. He'll do a better job than us. And we've led a couple of churches during our following of him, but the teamwork is so important. We can thinking about Jesus, we can think, well, he had teams of twos. He often would send them in pairs. He had, I can think of a threesome that Jesus had, a particular threesome. Peter, James, was it? And John, who there was a special part that they had to play. That was a team. Then he had the team of 12. He did most of his stuff with the 12 disciples. That was a team that he'd fitted together. They were very different men. They had different characters, as we read about them. They had different giftings. They had different callings, but it only really worked when they